The clock strikes midnight at Buckingham Palace, and somewhere deep within its ancient walls, a red phone sits waiting. It has never rung, but everyone knows what will happen when it does. That single call will set in motion a plan so detailed, so precise, that it accounts for every minute of the 10 days that follow. This is Operation Menai Bridge, and most people have no idea it even exists. Before we reveal what happens when a king dies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss these incredible true stories that reveal the hidden world around us. The plan has a name that sounds like something from a spy thriller, but Operation Menai Bridge is very real. It is named after the historic bridge in Wales, a symbol of connection between the old and the new. Every detail has been mapped out, years in advance, updated regularly, and rehearsed in secret. When King Charles eventually passes away, whether that happens tomorrow or decades from now, a specific sequence of events will unfold with military precision. The story of this operation tells us something fascinating about how Britain prepares for moments that shake the very foundation of the nation. It reveals the invisible machinery that keeps a country running even in its darkest hours. And it all begins with one person making one phone call. When the king dies, the first person to know officially will be his private secretary. This individual carries an enormous responsibility. Within minutes of the king's passing, the private secretary must contact the prime minister. The words used are not casual. The phrase is formal and specific. London Bridge is down was the code for Queen Elizabeth II, for King Charles. The code is Menai Bridge is down. Why use a code at all? The reason is simple, but crucial. In the first moments after a monarch dies, information must flow quickly to the right people without causing premature public panic. The Prime Minister needs to know immediately so the government can prepare. But if someone overhears a regular phone conversation, or if a message is intercepted, the code phrase prevents the news from leaking before official announcements can be made. After the Prime Minister, a carefully organized list of people must be notified in exact order. The Cabinet Secretary, who runs the civil service, receives the call next, and members of the Privy Council, senior government ministers, and the governments of other Commonwealth nations where King Charles serves as head of state. Countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand must be told before the public announcement. Their prime ministers receive secure calls in the middle of their night if necessary. The royal family members are contacted through private channels. Princes, princesses, and close relatives receive the news through phone calls from palace officials. These conversations happen in those first critical hours, ensuring no family member learns about the death from a news broadcast or social media post. But the notification process extends far beyond family and government. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the spiritual leader of the Church of England, must be informed. The Lord Chamberlain, who oversees the royal household, coordinates much of what happens next. The keeper of the privy purse, who manages royal finances, needs to know because financial matters must be handled immediately. Even the military branches receive coded notifications. The Chief of Defense Staff and commanders of the Army, Navy, and Air Force are contacted. They need to prepare for ceremonial duties, security operations, and the massive logistical challenge of managing crowds and processions in the days ahead. Meanwhile, as these calls are being made, another crucial step happens. Notice is prepared for the gates of Buckingham Palace. This is how the general public will first learn the news officially. A formal document printed on special paper with a black border announces the death of the king. Palace staff will attach this notice to the railings at Buckingham Palace, continuing a tradition that has existed for generations in our modern age. The notice at the palace gates happens almost simultaneously with another announcement. The royal family's official website switches to a black holding page with a short statement. Social media accounts post the news. News organizations that have been on standby receive official confirmation and can break the story. The timing of the public announcement depends partly on when the death occurs. The king dies at night. Officials might wait until early morning to tell the public, giving time for family notifications and initial preparations. If death comes during the day, the announcement could happen within hours. But regardless of timing, every step follows the predetermined plan. as news spreads across Britain and around the world. The first phase of Operation Menai Bridge is complete. The right people have been notified in the right order. The public knows, and now the real work begins. The Royal Guard standing watch at palaces across London receives special instructions. Their role is about to change dramatically. What they must do in the coming days has been practiced, but never fully executed in this generation. The British public will soon witness traditions that many have never seen in their lifetimes. The last time these ceremonies were performed was for Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022. And before that, it had been 70 years since a monarch's death. Each time, the ancient protocols adapt slightly to modern times, while maintaining their essential character. But as the first day turns into night, and as millions of people absorb the shocking news, preparations are already underway for what comes next. The Royal Guard has specific posts to maintain, specific duties to perform, and a specific role in ceremonies that will captivate the entire world. Their training is about to be tested in ways they have anticipated but hoped would not come soon. The morning after the King's death breaks differently than any other morning in recent British history. As dawn light touches the streets of London, the Royal Guard stands at attention with a new awareness. Their routine, practiced thousands of times, now carries profound weight. Every movement, every gesture, every moment of their duty will be watched by millions. This is what they trained for. But training and reality are very different things. The Household Division, which provides the Royal Guard, consists of 7 regiments. The Life Guards and Blues and Royals form the Household Cavalry. 5 regiments of Foot Guards include the Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards, Scots Guards, Irish Guards, and Welsh Guards. These elite soldiers have guarded British monarchs for centuries. Now they must perform their most solemn duty. Within hours of the announcement, the guard mounting at Buckingham Palace changes its character. The ceremony that tourists usually photograph with excitement becomes a moment of national mourning. The guards wear black armbands over their distinctive red tunics. The regimental bands that normally play uplifting marches switch to somber, slow music. Every note reflects the nation's grief. But the visual changes are just the beginning. The guard's actual responsibilities expand dramatically. Buckingham Palace transforms from a working royal residence into the focal point of national mourning. Thousands, then tens of thousands, and eventually hundreds of thousands of people will come to leave flowers, pay respects, and share in collective grief. The Guard must manage this unprecedented situation while maintaining security and dignity. Additional soldiers are called to duty. Off-duty guardsmen return to their barracks. Reserves are activated. The number of personnel at key locations doubles or triples. They need to secure not just Buckingham Palace but also St. James's Palace, Windsor Castle, and eventually Westminster Hall, where the King's body will lie in state. Each location requires careful coordination. Security becomes more complex when grief brings massive crowds. The Guard works closely with police to create barriers, manage flow, and watch for potential problems. They must be simultaneously respectful of mourners and vigilant about safety. This balance requires judgment and sensitivity, not always associated with military discipline. But the training of the Household Division includes exactly this kind of situation. At the same time, the Guard begins preparing for ceremonies that will occur in the coming days. The King's body must be moved from wherever he died to Buckingham Palace, then to Westminster Hall, and finally to the location of the funeral. Each movement involves processions with the Guard playing central roles. Officers study maps, review timing, and inspect uniforms. Everything must be perfect. The Queen Consort, now the Queen Dowager, remains under the protection of the Household Division. Her security detail increases. Her movements are coordinated with the King's son, who has immediately become King Charles's successor. The new monarch requires his own protection detail, separate from what he had as prince. The Guard must instantly adapt to this change in the royal hierarchy. Meanwhile, behind palace walls, preparations continue for the ceremonial lying in state. Westminster Hall, the oldest part of the Palace of Westminster, will receive the King's coffin. The guard will stand vigil there in shifts around the clock. This vigil is one of the most demanding duties a guardsman can perform. They must stand completely still, at attention, for 20-minute intervals while thousands of mourners file past. The Vigil of the Princes is a particularly moving ceremony, where the king's children will stand guard around their father's coffin. The Royal Guard facilitates this ceremony, coordinating with royal family members who may not have military experience. They provide guidance on protocol, positioning, and timing. It is a delicate task, helping grieving children honor their father while maintaining ceremonial precision. As the second day unfolds, the scale of public response becomes clear. The queue to see the king lying in state begins forming even before the coffin arrives at Westminster Hall. People camp overnight, waiting hours or even days for the chance to pay respects. The guard helps manage this queue, which can stretch for miles along the Thames River. They provide information, assist those who feel unwell, and maintain order without appearing harsh. The guardsmen themselves are not immune to emotion. Many have served the king personally during his reign. They have stood watch while he conducted his duties, protected him at public events, and developed a sense of personal connection to the monarch. Now they must perform their duties while processing their own grief. It is part of being a professional soldier, but that does not make it easy. Training for Operation Menai Bridge includes psychological preparation for this reality. Officers remind their soldiers that showing emotion is not weakness, but that duty requires them to maintain composure while on post. They can grieve on their own time. While in uniform, they represent something larger than themselves. The uniform itself becomes more significant. Every button must be polished to a mirror shine. Every crease must be razor sharp. The bearskin caps must sit at precisely the right angle. Standards that are always high become absolutely uncompromising. The world is watching, and the guard must embody British tradition and excellence at this crucial moment. International dignitaries begin arriving in London. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, and queens from around the world come to pay respects. Each brings their own security requirements. The guard coordinates with diplomatic protection officers and foreign security teams. Westminster Abbey, where the funeral will be held, becomes a logistical puzzle involving dozens of security agencies. The household division plays a key coordinating role. Food and rest become challenges. Guardsmen work extraordinarily long hours during this period. The palace kitchens prepare meals around the clock. Temporary rest areas are set up. Soldiers grab sleep in shifts, often in their uniforms, ready to return to duty immediately if needed. Some will work 20-hour days for a week straight. Yet through exhaustion and emotion, the standard never slips. This is what separates the household division from ordinary military units. They have been selected and trained specifically for their ability to perform flawlessly under pressure. In ceremonial contexts that demand perfection, Operation Menai Bridge is the ultimate test of everything they represent. The third day brings a ceremony that will define the visual memory of the king's death for generations. The procession to Westminster Hall, where the king will lie in state, requires coordination between multiple military branches, but the Royal Guard forms its backbone. They have rehearsed versions of this ceremony, but never with the actual weight of a monarch's coffin, never with millions watching worldwide, and never with the emotional gravity of the real moment. The gun carriage that will carry. The king's coffin is a piece of history itself. The same carriage bore Queen Elizabeth II, King George VI, and other monarchs before them. It is pulled not by horses but by Royal Navy ratings, sailors who have specially trained for this duty. However, the guard surrounds the carriage, walking in perfect formation, their slow march setting the pace for the entire procession. Early that morning, guardsmen gather for final inspections. Officers examine every soldier with microscopic attention. A loose thread means changing the entire tunic. A slightly tarnished button means repolishing on the spot. This inspection is more thorough than any parade preparation because the stakes are immeasurably higher. One guardsman later described it as the most nervous he had ever been in his military career, and he had served in combat zones. The procession route from Buckingham palace to Westminster Hall is lined with soldiers standing at attention. Thousands of guardsmen and other military personnel create a continuous corridor of respect. They stand motionless for hours before the procession even begins, then remain at attention as it passes, then stay in position afterward as crowds disperse. The physical demands are extraordinary, but the mental discipline required is even more challenging. As the king's coffin emerges from Buckingham Palace, draped in the royal standard and topped with the imperial state crown, a silence falls over London that feels almost supernatural. The city of 9 million people seems to hold its breath. The guards surrounding the coffin begin their slow, measured march. Each step is exactly synchronized. Each movement is identical across all the soldiers. This is precision drill at its highest level. The pace of the march is deliberately slow, approximately 75 steps per minute compared to the normal military pace of 120. This slow march is physically exhausting. It requires constant muscle tension to move so slowly while maintaining perfect posture and alignment. The guards train for this, but training for an hour is different from doing it for the actual multi-hour procession through Central. London, behind the coffin, walks the new king, now officially Charles III's successor. Along with other members of the royal family, they followed the gun carriage in their own slow march. The guard must constantly monitor their positioning to ensure proper spacing, proper pace, and proper protocol. They must do this while facing forward, using only peripheral vision and extensive training to maintain awareness. Crowds line the route, 10 or 20 people deep in some places. Security is paramount, but the guard must also project solemnity and respect rather than threat. They carry their rifles with bayonets fixed, but the weapons point upward, a traditional sign of mourning rather than readiness for combat. Every detail of their appearance and bearing communicates respect for the deceased monarch. As the procession moves through London's streets, past landmarks known around the world, the emotional weight affects even the most hardened soldiers. Some guardsmen later admitted fighting back tears while maintaining their rigid composure. They could hear people in the crowds weeping. They could feel the historic significance of the moment. But their training held. Not one soldier broke formation. Not one showed visible emotion. Not one failed in their duty. The procession passes specific landmarks with particular significance. At the cenotaph, the memorial to Britain's war dead, there is a moment of especially profound silence. The king was the head of the armed forces. Every soldier in the procession has sworn an oath to the crown. They are saying goodbye not just to a monarch, but to their commander-in-chief. When the procession reaches Westminster Hall, the next phase begins. The coffin must be carried from the gun carriage into the ancient hall. This requires a bearer party of 8 guardsmen who have trained specifically for this task. They have practiced with weighted coffins to prepare, but nothing fully prepares them for carrying their actual king into Westminster Hall with the world watching. The bearer party must move in perfect unison. The coffin must remain absolutely level. Any stumble, any misalignment, any error would be captured by dozens of cameras and seen by billions of people. The pressure is immense, yet the 8 guardsmen perform flawlessly. They lift the coffin, turn in precise formation, and carry it up the steps and into Westminster Hall, where it will rest for 4 days. Inside Westminster Hall, another group of guards stands ready. These soldiers will maintain the vigil, standing at the 4 corners of the catafalque where the coffin rests. They stand on a raised platform, completely motionless, for 20-minute shifts. During those 20 minutes, they cannot scratch an itch, cannot adjust their stance, cannot react to anything that happens around them. They are living statues, embodying centuries of tradition and duty. The first vigil begins immediately after the coffin is positioned. For guardsmen take their posts. They face outward from the coffin, their heads bowed, their hands resting on their upturned rifles. The symbolism is powerful. They are guarding their king one final time, protecting him as they did in life. Honoring him in death, the changing of the vigil guard happens every 20 minutes, around the clock, for the entire lying in state period. Each change is itself a ceremony. New guards march in, the old guards step down, and the transition happens with balletic precision. Thousands of mourners waiting in the queue watch each change. It becomes one of the most memorable parts of their experience. Seeing the guards' dedication and discipline up close, but maintaining this vigil for 4 continuous days requires careful planning. The guards work in rotations, with some on duty, some resting, and some preparing for their next shift. Medical staff stand by because standing perfectly still for even 20 minutes can cause circulation problems. Some guardsmen feel faint. The honor of maintaining the vigil is also a physical challenge that pushes soldiers to their limits, as night falls on the 3rd day. Westminster Hall glows with soft light. The queue of mourners stretches for miles, moving slowly but constantly. The guards continue their vigil without pause. Outside, other guardsmen maintain security. The operation continues 24 hours a day, a testament to careful planning and the dedication of thousands of soldiers who understand they are part of something larger than themselves. By the 4th and 5th days, the lying in state has become a continuous stream of humanity passing through Westminster Hall. More than 250,000 people have already filed past the King's coffin, and the queue continues to grow. The Royal Guard has settled into an exhausting routine, but challenges emerged that no amount of planning could fully anticipate. One unexpected challenge is the emotional impact on the guardsmen themselves as they witness the public's grief up close. During their 20-minute vigil shifts, they watch mourners approach the coffin. They see elderly veterans who served under the King's command salute one final time with tears streaming down their faces. They see children holding their parents' hands, trying to understand what death means. They see people from every background, every ethnicity, every religion, united in shared loss. A guardsman later described watching a woman in her 80s approach the coffin during his vigil shift. She moved slowly with a cane, and when she reached the front, she stood for a long moment before making a deep, shaky curtsy. The guardsman wanted to help her, worried she might fall, but he could not move. His duty required him to remain still, to trust that others would assist if needed. That moment, he said, made him truly understand what service means. The guards also face practical challenges. Standing motionless for 20 minutes might sound easy, but the reality is brutal. The stone floor of Westminster Hall is hard and cold. The ceremonial uniform, while magnificent, is not designed for comfort. The bearskin cap weighs nearly 2 pounds and sits heavy on the head. Some guardsmen lock their knees to remain steady, but this can restrict blood flow and cause fainting. Fainting on duty is a guardsman's nightmare scenario. Yet it happens during the lying in state. When a soldier feels lightheaded, protocol requires them to maintain position until their shift ends or until they actually collapse. Pride and training keep most on their feet, but a few do faint. When this happens, medical staff quickly assist them away from public view, and replacement guards seamlessly step in. The vigil never pauses, never shows a gap. Outside Westminster Hall, the guard faces different challenges. The queue to enter has grown so long that people wait for over 10 hours. Managing this queue requires patience and compassion alongside military discipline. Guardsmen help direct the flow, provide information, and assist those who need medical attention or facilities. They become, in a way, caretakers of the grieving nation. Security concerns intensify as the funeral approaches. Intelligence services warn of potential threats. The gathering of world leaders in one location creates an unprecedented security challenge. The Guard increases its presence at all royal locations. Extra checkpoints are established. Soldiers patrol areas that normally see little military presence. Yet they must do all this without creating an atmosphere of fear or making mourners feel unsafe. The Guard also participates in rehearsals for the funeral itself. Westminster Abbey, where the service will take place, becomes a hub of careful preparation. The guards who will line the route, stand inside the abbey, and escort the coffin must practice their movements repeatedly. Timing is crucial because the funeral will be broadcast globally, and every element must happen precisely on schedule. These rehearsals happen late at night, and the lying in state closes briefly to prepare for the next day. Exhausted guardsmen, who have already worked long hours, must then practice marches and formations. The physical toll accumulates. Some soldiers have been on duty with minimal rest for 4 days straight. Medical staff monitor them for signs of severe exhaustion, but the guardsmen push through. They know the funeral represents the culmination of everything they have prepared for. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the logistics of the funeral grow more complex. Representatives from dozens of countries arrive with their own security teams. The abbey can hold only about 2,000 people, but the guest list includes royalty, presidents, prime ministers, and other leaders from around the world. The guard must coordinate with all these security teams while maintaining their ceremonial duties. The day before the funeral brings a particularly moving ceremony. The king's family holds a private vigil where his children stand guard around the coffin for 15 minutes. The royal guard facilitates this vigil, positioning the family members correctly, briefing them on protocol, and standing nearby in case assistance is needed. It is a moment where the professional soldiers support a grieving family in their most personal farewell. That evening, as the lying in state comes to an end, the final members of the public pass through Westminster Hall. The doors close at a predetermined time, and the guards who have maintained the vigil for 4 days complete their last shift. There is no applause, no public recognition. They simply march out as they marched in, having fulfilled a duty that required everything they had to give. The night before the funeral is short. Guardsmen try to rest, but most struggle to sleep. They review their assignments mentally. They check their uniforms one more time. They think about the next day and what it will mean. Some write letters to family members, expressing things they might not say out loud. Others simply sit quietly with their thoughts. As dawn breaks on the day of the funeral, London wakes to a transformation. Every street along the funeral route is lined with barriers. Police and military personnel are positioned at intervals of just a few meters. The security operation involves over 10,000 personnel from various agencies. With the Royal Guard forming the visible ceremonial core, the guards begin assembling hours before the funeral service starts. Officers conduct final inspections that are even more rigorous than before. This is the day that will be remembered and replayed for generations. Every guardsman knows that their appearance and conduct will be scrutinized by historians and the public alike. The pressure is immense, but so is the pride. Inside Westminster Abbey, guards take their positions along the walls and at key locations. They stand at attention as guests begin arriving. Each head of state, each royal visitor, each dignitary passes by these silent soldiers who represent the continuity of the British military tradition. The guards do not react, do not acknowledge. Simply stand as they have stood for centuries, embodying duty and service. Outside, millions of people line the streets, pack viewing areas, and watch from windows of buildings along the route. They have come to witness history, to say goodbye to their king, and to be part of this moment of national significance. The guard, visible in their red tunics and bearskin caps, provides a thread of continuity connecting present to past, linking this moment to centuries of British history. The funeral morning arrives with gray skies that seem appropriate for the somber occasion. At Westminster Hall, the bearer party prepares for their most important task. Carrying the king's coffin to the gun carriage for the final procession, these 8 guardsmen have trained for months, but now every practice session comes down to this single performance. The weight of the coffin is real. The eyes of the world are watching. There is no room for error. The bearer party lifts the coffin with synchronized precision. They move as one organism, each man matching his steps exactly to the others. The coffin must remain level, stable, and dignified. They carry it down the steps of Westminster Hall, and the watching crowd holds its breath. One slip on these ancient stone steps could be catastrophic, but the guards' training and focus ensure perfect execution. The coffin reaches the gun carriage safely, and the bearer party steps back. Their first crucial duty complete. The procession from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey is longer and more complex than the earlier procession. It follows a route through central London that allows maximum public viewing while maintaining security. The Royal Navy ratings who pull the gun carriage take up the ropes. The guards form around the carriage in precise formation. Behind them, The new king and the royal family prepare to follow on foot. The world holds its breath as this historic procession begins. The sound is unforgettable. The slow beat of muffled drums sets the pace. The gun carriage wheels roll over the pavement with a heavy rhythmic sound. Thousands of military boots strike the ground in perfect unison. Big Ben tolls once for each year of the king's life, the bells echoing across London. The emotional power of these sounds combines with the visual spectacle to create a moment that those present will remember. Forever, the guards marching alongside and behind the coffin maintain their rigid discipline. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, they can hear people weeping in the crowds. They can feel the weight of history in every step. Some of the guardsmen marching knew the king personally from their service. They have protected him at events, stood watch outside his private residences, and devoted their military careers to serving the crown. Now, they escort him on his final journey. The route passes landmarks that represent British history and culture. The procession moves past the Houses of Parliament, where the king opened parliamentary sessions throughout his reign. It continues past government buildings where he conducted state business. Each location adds layers of meaning to this final journey through the capital city he served. When the procession reaches Westminster Abbey, the next precise operation begins. The bearer party again takes control of the coffin. They must carry it from the gun carriage, up the Abbey steps, through the Great West Door, and down the long nave to the front of the church, where the service will be held. Millions of television viewers watch every step. The guardsmen feel the weight of the coffin, the weight of responsibility, and the weight of the moment. Inside the Abbey, 2,000 mourners rise as the coffin enters. World leaders, royalty from multiple continents, representatives from Commonwealth nations, and personal friends of the king all stand in respect. The guards carry the coffin forward, their footsteps echoing in the ancient space. They place it on the catafalque before the altar, complete their duty, and step back to their positions along the walls. The funeral service proceeds with Anglican tradition and personal touches that reflect the king's life and faith. Hymns are sung by choirs whose voices fill the Gothic space with sound that has comforted mourners in this same building for nearly 1,000 years. Readings are given by family members and religious leaders. The Archbishop of Canterbury delivers a sermon celebrating the king's devotion to duty and service. Throughout the service, the guards stand motionless at their posts. They cannot participate in the prayers or singing. Their role is to be present, to represent the military and the nation, and to maintain the dignity of the occasion through their silent discipline. It is a strange experience, being part of such an emotional event while being required to show no emotion. The service includes the removal of the instruments of state from the coffin. The imperial state crown, the orb, and the scepter are taken from the coffin and placed on the altar. This ancient ritual symbolizes the end of the reign, the return of the symbols of monarchy before the king is laid to rest. The guards watch these moments with special understanding, knowing they represent the transfer of their allegiance to the new monarch. After the service concludes, the bearer party returns to carry the coffin from the abbey. They retrace their steps down the nave, through the Great West Door, and back to the gun carriage. The procession now moves toward Wellington Arch, where the coffin will be transferred to a hearse for the final journey to Windsor Castle and St. George's Chapel. For burial, this leg of the procession takes the coffin through the heart of ceremonial London, down Whitehall, past Downing Street, along the Mall toward Buckingham Palace, then through the palace forecourt and onward to Wellington Arch. Hundreds of thousands of people line this route. The guards maintain their formation and discipline despite exhaustion that has accumulated over 10 days of intense duty. At Wellington Arch, another carefully choreographed transfer takes place. The bearer party lifts the coffin from the gun carriage for the last time and carries it to the hearse. This modern vehicle, designed specifically for royal funerals, will carry the king to Windsor, while the guards continue to provide ceremonial escort as far as possible. Some guardsmen will travel to Windsor to participate in the final service and burial. The hearse begins its journey along motorways that have been closed to normal traffic. People line bridges and overpasses, tossing flowers as the hearse passes below. It is a spontaneous outpouring of affection and grief that no operation plan could have predicted or organized. The sight of ordinary people saying goodbye in their own way provides a counterpoint to the formal military ceremonies at Windsor Castle. Another contingent of guards stands ready. These soldiers have been preparing their own part of Operation Menai Bridge. St. George's Chapel, where many monarchs are buried, will be the king's final resting place. The guards here have cleaned, polished, and prepared with the same intensity as their colleagues in London. They understand that the final ceremony must be as perfect as everything that came before. The committal service at St. George's Chapel is smaller and more intimate than the Westminster Abbey funeral. Only close family and a few hundred guests attend. But the guards' role remains crucial. They stand watch outside the chapel. They line the route within Windsor Castle grounds. They maintain security while projecting respect and solemnity. The committal service at St. George's Chapel brings Operation Menai Bridge to its final moments. Inside the chapel, its magnificent medieval architecture and banners of the Knights of the Garter hanging above, the king's closest family gathers for this last goodbye. The guards who have traveled from London take their positions, their presence a reminder that even in this private moment, the king is surrounded by those who served him faithfully. The Dean of Windsor conducts the service with words that are both traditional and personal. The king is being laid to rest, not just as a monarch, but as a father, grandfather, and husband. The crown jeweler steps forward to remove the instruments of state from the coffin for the final time. The crown, orb, and scepter are lifted away, leaving just the coffin draped in the royal standard. This act symbolizes the complete end of the reign, the separation of the person from the office. The Lord Chamberlain, who has overseen the royal household, breaks his white staff of office and places it on the coffin. This ancient tradition marks the end of his service to this particular monarch. It is a visible, tangible symbol that this chapter of history has closed. The guards witness this moment, understanding that their own oath now fully transfers to the new king who stands grieving nearby. The coffin is lowered into the royal vault beneath the chapel. This descent happens slowly, accompanied by prayers and the singing of hymns. The guards can hear the mechanism working, see the coffin disappearing from view. It is a profoundly final moment. After 10 days of processions, ceremonies, vigils, and services, the king's earthly journey ends here in this vault alongside his ancestors. As the service concludes and the family departs, the guards remain at their posts for a final period. They stand watch over the chapel, providing security, but also offering a last gesture of respect. Gradually, as the afternoon turns to evening, they are released from their duties. For the first time in 10 days, they can stand down, relax their posture, and begin to process everything they have experienced. The relief is physical and immediate. Soldiers who have maintained rigid discipline for days can finally stretch, move naturally, and shed some of the ceremonial burden they have carried. But the emotional impact takes longer to surface. Many guardsmen find themselves unexpectedly emotional once the pressure releases. They have been focused so intensely on performing their duties perfectly that they have suppressed their own grief and exhaustion. Now both come flooding back. In the barracks that evening, there is an unusual quietness. Normally, after major ceremonial events, soldiers might celebrate or relax with loud camaraderie. But tonight is different. The guardsmen sit in small groups, talking softly about what they witnessed and what they felt. They share stories about moments during the past 10 days that affected them personally. They support each other through the complex mix of pride in their performance and sadness about the loss of their king. Officers conduct debriefings, reviewing what went well and what could be improved for future operations. This might seem coldly analytical so soon after the funeral, but it serves an important purpose. The ceremonial details must be recorded while fresh in memory. Lessons learned must be documented so that when this plan must be executed again, perhaps decades in the future, the knowledge is not lost. The media coverage begins to shift from the immediate events to analysis and reflection. Commentators praise the precision and dignity of the military ceremonies. The guards' performance receives particular recognition. Images of the bearer party carrying the coffin, the guards standing vigil, and the slow march through London become iconic representations of the funeral. The guardsmen see themselves in these images and feel pride, but also a strange distance, as if watching different people perform duties they cannot quite remember doing in the days following the funeral. Britain begins returning to normal routines. Though the nation feels fundamentally changed, the new king assumes his full duties with ceremonies that the Guard also participates in. But these are celebratory rather than mournful. Life continues, as it must, but the memory of Operation Menai Bridge, the 10 days that tested every aspect of royal protocol, remains vivid for all involved. For the Royal Guard, the operation becomes a defining experience in their military careers. Some of the guardsmen will serve for decades more, participating in countless ceremonies and guarding future monarchs. But when they look back on their service, these 10 days will stand out. They performed duties that most soldiers never face, executed plans that had been prepared for years, and became part of history in a way few people ever do. The operation also reinforces important lessons about preparation, discipline, and the value of tradition. The reason Operation Menai Bridge worked so well was not luck or improvisation. It succeeded because every detail had been planned. Every contingency had been considered, and every person knew their role precisely. The guards trained for this scenario throughout their careers, never knowing if they would actually perform it, but always ready if called upon. Britain's approach to royal funerals reflects something deeper about how the nation sees itself and its history. The ceremonies connect present to past, linking current generations to centuries of tradition. The guards in their historic uniforms performing ancient rituals embody this connection. They are modern soldiers using contemporary training and technology, but they also represent an unbroken line stretching back through British history. The meticulous planning of Operation Menai Bridge also reveals the British character in certain ways. The preference for order, the respect for protocol, the belief that doing things properly matters even in times of crisis, all find expression in how the royal funeral unfolds. Some might see this as rigid or old-fashioned, but for those who participated, it provided structure and purpose during a difficult time, as weeks turned to months. The immediate intensity of the experience fades, but its impact remains. The guardsmen who stood vigil, who marched in processions, who carried the coffin, carried those memories forward. They know they were part of something significant, something that will be remembered and studied by future generations. When they eventually leave military service, these 10 days will be among the experiences they reflect on most, the planning for the next. Operation Menai Bridge has already begun in quiet offices within the Ministry of Defense and the royal household. The lessons from this operation will be incorporated. Plans will be updated. A new generation of guardsmen will be trained for duties they may or may not ever perform. The cycle continues, ensuring that when the next monarch passes, Britain will be ready once again. But for now, the guards return to their regular duties. They mount watch at Buckingham Palace, St. James's Palace, and Windsor Castle. They perform the changing of the guard for tourists. They train for potential military deployments. Life in the household division continues its usual rhythms. Yet something has changed. The guardsmen who participated in Operation Menai Bridge carry themselves with a quiet confidence born from having faced their most demanding test and succeeded flawlessly. The king they served and mourned is now part of history. His reign complete, his legacy established. The guards who protected him in life and honored him in death have fulfilled their ultimate duty. Operation Menai Bridge, planned for years and executed over 10 intense days, is complete. The bridge between one reign and the next has been crossed, and Britain continues forward, carrying its history and traditions into an uncertain future, protected and honored by guards who stand ready for whatever comes next.